What I am about to tell you will leave you speechless. What this dog found in a storm drain will forever change your perception of animals. And at the end of the video, you'll find out why this story has gone viral all over the world. Stay with us. This photo amazes the entire internet. See what the dog finds. Annie was returning home from work when she saw a dog standing over a storm drain, looking at it with a sad expression. Before getting into the story, I want to announce something special. During this video, I will tell you a magic word. If you comment with that word, you will enter our contest to win exclusive prizes every week. Stay with us and look for the hidden word. Have you ever encountered an animal that seemed to want to communicate something to you? This is the story of a dog who was not seeking help for himself, but for someone who could not speak. When she looked into the storm drain, she saw that the dog had found something extraordinary. As Annie was returning home from work, she passed by a shop and saw a dog standing outside. The shiny black coat of the German Shepherd caught her attention, and she couldn't resist admiring its beauty. However, what she found strange was the dog's sad expression, staring at her with longing while standing over the drain. She saw that the dog appeared unhappy, and it tugged at her heart. But she chose to keep walking home, assuming that the owner was inside the shop and would soon take the dog home. Annie just wanted to rest after her long day and didn't have time to stop and comfort the dog. Would you have stopped or walked away like Annie? Many of us ignore signals that could change lives. Would you have done the same? The next day, when she walked down the same street again, she saw the dog once more. It was still standing over the same storm drain, looking sadly into it. Why was that dog still there? What mystery was it hiding? What Annie was about to discover would shock anyone. This time, she wanted to pick up some supplies from the shop, and as she approached the store, the dog looked at her suspiciously. She noticed how its whole body tensed as she walked past it. Finally, she made her way through the door, and as she did, she looked back at the dog through the glass. She saw it looking sadly into the drain again. She assumed it was hungry and knew that the shop sold treats, which is why it had camped right outside. As she examined it more closely, she became increasingly convinced that the dog was without an owner.
Hi there. If you're enjoying this story, make sure to subscribe to our channel. It's completely free and takes just a second, but it means the world to us. Your support is the reason we can keep bringing you incredible stories every day.
From what she could see, it looked like it had spent the entire night outside the shop, curled up on the cold pavement. The thought of this poor dog spending the night alone on the street broke her heart. She decided she had to do something to help it, and the first step was to feed it. She wanted to ease its hunger and show it a bit of kindness. While shopping for groceries, she also bought some treats for it. They were mostly jerky, and she knew it would love them. She bought enough to fill it up because she didn't know when it would have its next meal. After finishing her shopping, she came out of the store with a bag of treats in hand. Then she carefully placed the treats on the ground, smiling as she encouraged the dog to enjoy them. The dog looked at her for a few minutes, but remained completely still. She noticed it was still distrustful of her, so she stepped away from the food. The dog immediately approached and started taking the pieces in its mouth. But to her surprise, it didn't eat them. It simply carried them back to the drain and began slipping them through the grates, one by one. But why was it doing that? Was it just a hungry dog, or was there something much bigger beneath the surface? You're not leaving now, are you? Each treat slipped through the grates and disappeared into the ditch below. Annie was frozen in shock, her eyes fixed on the scene before her. She couldn't understand what the dog had just done. It was then that she realized her mistake. The dog wasn't waiting for treats from passers-by, but was instead fixated on something in the drain. She wondered what could be so fascinating that it would put that above its own hunger. Something was clearly wrong, and Annie's curiosity was piqued. She was determined to unveil the mystery. She approached the drain, hoping to catch a glimpse of something. But the moment she took a few steps, the dog stood up and barked menacingly. Its whole body was tense, and it looked ready to attack her. Whatever it was protecting, it didn't want anyone to come near. The message it sent was crystal clear. As Annie stared at the dog, she suddenly realized that it was ready to attack her at the slightest provocation. A wave of fear washed over her. She was genuinely terrified, a feeling she had never experienced before when faced with a dog. When Annie was a child, she had an intense desire to have a puppy and endlessly begged her mother for months to get one. She dreamed of having a furry companion to play with and love. However, her single mother, who struggled to get by without any financial support, could not afford to care for a dog. Despite her wishes, she had to prioritize meeting Annie's basic needs. How many of us have ever dreamed of having a pet as a friend? Yet sometimes, fate has other plans. Would Annie ever have thought that the bond with a dog would be so profound? Annie's mother patiently explained their situation, and eventually, Annie began to understand and stopped asking for a puppy. As she grew up, her interest in dogs gradually faded, but fate had other plans. Years later, as an adult, Annie faced a difficult moment when her mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and their roles reversed. Annie found herself caring for her mother, trying in every way to make her final days comfortable, peaceful, and joyful. Despite the painful reality that their time together was limited, Annie was determined to give her mother the best quality of life possible. During that time, Annie lost a significant amount of weight, making her appear like a mere shadow of her former self. She was constantly in financial trouble, as all of her income went to cover her mother's hospital expenses. Eventually, her mother succumbed to the cold embrace of death. When her mother died, Annie was sitting next to her bed, holding her hand tightly. She cried uncontrollably, unable to contain her pain. She was overwhelmed by the realization that she was now completely alone in the world, with no one to turn to. Later that day, Annie returned home from the hospital, her heart still heavy with grief. As she approached her entrance, she was surprised to find an abandoned dog patiently sitting in front of her door. The dog looked at her with the saddest, soulful eyes she had ever seen. Sorry for the interruption, but before continuing with the story, I kindly ask you to like the video and subscribe to this channel. It is very important to us. Thank you so much. It was as if it were pleading with her to take it in, to offer it a sense of belonging and comfort. The dog's fur was matted and dirty, its ears droopy, and its tail low, revealing its status as a stray. Annie's initial shock transformed into a mixture of emotions. She was not prepared to care for a dog, knew nothing of their needs, and was not ready to take on that responsibility. Yet, its state of sadness prevented her from finding the energy to chase it away. So she ignored it and went inside. At midnight, Annie struggled to sleep, her mind consumed with thoughts of her mother. Additionally, she was distracted by a soft barking outside. When the noise became too insistent to ignore, she got up to investigate and followed the sound to her front door. Opening it, she was shocked to find the dog still there, barking softly. She had completely forgotten about it, thinking it had gone away. Unfortunately, it had rained, and the dog was drenched. It was cold, and it even had a runny nose. It broke her heart to see it that way, and she felt a sense of guilt. She immediately took it inside, and the dog happily settled near the fire. She even grabbed a blanket and covered it. For the rest of the night, she sat by the fireplace with the dog. It was as if they had bonded unintentionally. She felt they were crying together, and that pain was what connected them. The next day, it didn't even cross her mind to send the dog away. The dog became part of her life, and she named it Comfort. She loved it so much and brought it with her when her mother was finally buried. Annie and Comfort navigated the darkness of grief together, and in doing so, found a way to heal and emerge stronger on the other side. As the years passed, Annie finally managed to return to what life had been like before losing her mother. Unfortunately, another tragedy occurred, and Annie couldn't understand how it could happen. She had come home from work one evening, expecting to see Comfort's wagging tail and happy face inside. But instead, she found it outside, its eyes shining with excitement. She was confused, thinking she had forgotten to close the gate, but that didn't seem right. She had always been so careful. As she approached the road, Comfort saw her and joyfully barked, wagging its tail wildly. Annie's heart filled with love, and she quickened her pace to meet it. But Comfort was too excited to wait. It dashed onto the road, not seeing the car speeding around the corner. Annie's world seemed to slow down as she watched in terror. The car screeched and came to a stop, but it was too late. Comfort's body lay still, its eyes frozen in a permanent fixed stare. Annie's scream echoed in the silence as she rushed to her beloved dog's side. She hugged it, its lifeless body, tears streaming down her face, begging it to come back to her. But it was too late. Comfort had vanished, taken from her in an instant. The magic word of the day is heroic. Write it in the comments to enter our contest and win exclusive prizes every week. For a long time after the incident, Annie felt completely numb. This emotion was like reliving the loss of her mother all over again. Comfort, a friend who had become so important to her, was gone. She blamed herself for the mistake that led to his escape. If she had closed the gate, he would never have gotten out. Eventually, Annie forced herself to regain control. She told herself that neither her mother nor Comfort would want to see her fall apart. She needed to be strong for them. Annie returned to work, but nothing was the same. She was dealing with the changes, but it was difficult. Annie tried to replace Comfort with another dog, but found it too painful. Every time she went to the shelter, she broke down in tears and had to leave. Annie realized that no dog could replace Comfort. She promised herself that she would never take in another pet again. Since then, Annie had avoided dogs and any personal attachment to them altogether. Now, however, as she fixed her gaze on the dog standing above the drainage, she was confused. She thought it might be hungry, but it had poured all the treats into the drain. She needed to know what was in the drain, but from where she stood, she couldn't see anything. She realized then that she had to find another way to look into the drainage. She waved goodbye as she left. The dog watched her walk away until she was no longer visible. Then it continued to look into the storm drain. What the dog didn't know, however, was that Annie had a plan. Later that night, she left her house dressed in black clothing to blend in with the darkness. She returned to the spot where she had seen the dog, hoping it wouldn't be there so she could take a look. She was mistaken. The dog was still there, on guard. When she got too close, it barked fiercely at her. To avoid drawing unwanted attention to herself, she immediately turned and ran away. She became even more puzzled. The dog refused to leave the spot, and she found this mysterious. She was eager to understand why. However, this time, she needed a strategy, one that was more effective. She now knew that the dog wouldn't leave the drain for any reason, and as long as it didn't trust her, it wouldn't let her approach. The only option she had was to earn its trust, and that could only be achieved by becoming its friend. She started the next day. She named the dog Ninja, due to its shiny black fur and how beautiful it was. When she returned from work, she went into the shop and bought some treats for him. She watched him eat some and slide the rest into the drain, but he didn't do anything else. She repeated the same thing day after day, buying treats, watching him eat, and then throwing the rest into the drain. Each time, she called him by his new name so he could get used to it. In less than a week, progress began to show. Ninja quickly started looking forward to her visits. Every time he saw her, he wagged his tail excitedly and looked at her with beautiful, expectant eyes. Then she would buy some treats and give them to him, and he allowed her to pet him. It was a beautiful process, and neither of them realized that they were bonding. Not long after, Ninja trusted her enough to come close to the drain. Finally, the long-awaited day arrived. Annie was ready to discover what was hidden in the drain. She stood above it and looked inside, but she couldn't make out anything. It was pitch dark in there, and there was no visible sign of anything. However, she didn't lose hope. She knelt down and lowered her eyes to the drain. Finally, Annie was ready to uncover the truth. But what she found left her speechless. It wasn't just one, but 6 tiny beings in life-threatening danger. Was this the secret that the dog had been protecting? She didn't care that people were staring at her and wondering what was happening to her. She was focused on discovering what was down in the drain. And yet, she found nothing. However, with her face so close to the drain, she soon heard a faint sound. It was tiny, and she could hardly hear it above the noise of traffic all around her. She turned to the side, lowered her ear to the drain, and the sound became a little clearer. She could hear faint meows. A kitten had gotten stuck in the drain. With her heart pounding in her chest, she immediately called the firefighters and told them everything, asking them to come. The firefighters arrived in record time. As soon as she saw them, she pointed to the manhole. The grate was immediately removed, and one of the firefighters looked inside with a flashlight. He nodded right away, confirming her suspicion that a kitten was trapped there. However, there was an even bigger surprise. The manhole was deep, so one of the men had to jump in to pull out the kitten. He brought out one kitten, then another, and another one. He kept pulling kittens out of the ditch until there were 6 in total. Annie's mouth dropped open in shock as she stared at the little creatures. She couldn't believe they had all been stuck there for so long, and no one had known. The firefighters suspected that the kittens had been swept into the drain by the heavy rain and had gotten stuck. Annie looked at Ninja in wonder. She realized how adorable he was. Do you believe that animals are smarter than we think? Some say that dogs have no awareness. But after this story, are you still sure you believe that? Write your opinion in the comments. We're curious to know what you think. She had noticed that the kittens were trapped and had refused to leave them alone, so she shared her treats with them and protected them. She didn't trust anyone to take care of them, and that was why she had been so aggressive at first. Now, with the kittens safe out of the ditch, his tail wagged excitedly, and he kept jumping as he tried to lick Annie's feet. He led her to where the kittens had been placed. Some of them were sick and were being prepared for transport to the nearest veterinarian. People took pictures of the dog and the kittens. They were all impressed by the intelligence he had shown because they knew that if it hadn't been for him, the poor kittens would still have been stuck in the ditch. If you think Ninja is a hero, share this story with 3 people who love animals. We need to let the world know how extraordinary animals can be. As the kittens were taken to the veterinarian for treatment, Annie took Ninja home because she couldn't leave him on the street. He also seemed eager to accompany her on the journey. He wagged his tail enthusiastically. He was the first dog she had taken home since Comfort had passed away, and she was a bit skeptical, scared that he wouldn't like the place. Fortunately, she was wrong. He loved his new home and jumped around so much that she laughed out loud. He reminded her of how things had been between her and Comfort. The duo spent the following weeks doing things together, eating, running around, and doing many other things. They even slept in the same bed. And so Annie not only found a friend, but she also discovered that love and trust can heal any wound. Did this story touch your heart? Subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories and give us a like to support us. Annie's heart overflowed with love, and she knew she had found a new companion with whom to share the joys of life. She realized she loved Ninja very much, so she decided to make things official. She got the necessary paperwork and adopted him. Meanwhile, the kittens had all found loving homes to be placed in. Now they had devoted families who would take care of them and protect them, no matter what happened. Moreover, the internet was flooded with pictures of Ninja and the kittens. People couldn't stop talking about what he had done and wanted to see more of him. Annie was happy and proud of him for that. Did you enjoy this story? Would you have acted like Annie? Do you have a dog? Have you ever adopted one? How important is it to you? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, subscribe to this channel and leave a like. We all face many difficulties, but if we don't give up, we can be happy again. Get ready, because in the upcoming videos, you will discover truths that will touch you, surprise you, and make you reflect like never before. Don't miss what's coming, because it might just touch your heart. If this story moved you, leave a like and subscribe to our channel. It's free, easy, and helps us continue to share incredible stories. Additionally, every comment you leave will make a difference. For every comment, we promise to contribute to supporting initiatives for abandoned dogs. Be part of the change, comment below, and spread the love by sharing this video with 3 people who love animals. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for your support.